back to this show from Teachers Talk Radio. You can catch up with all our shows by visiting our YouTube channel or by listening back at ttradio.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to enjoy more live education conversation from TTR. We hope you enjoy this show.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Hello and welcome to another episode, another show of the Sunday Social with myself, Martin, and I've got Claudia here who's joining the show. Thank you ever so much for joining today's show, Claudia.
I'm really excited for it.
Well, welcome. I suppose the biggest similarity that we've got here is that we're both working and living in South Korea, and
yes.
Many of the regular viewers of the show will probably know that my background and my insight and introduction into working and living in Korea. But how about yourself? What brought you here to the land of morning calm?
Well, it was a wild one. I turned 25 and then I had the big quarter life crisis. The question of what have I done? What's my mark on this earth? And I just thought to myself, all I've done is go to school and then I'm now working. And at the time I was working for a law firm because my degree was in law. And I wasn't happy. It was just a regular 9-to-5 grind, the same thing every day, and the stress of it. And it didn't feel rewarding. And so hit 25 and I just thought to myself, I've got to do something big. We've got to, if this is my last year to live, let's live it large. And I remember thinking about going to Asia, but I was too chicken to actually go for a holiday. So I thought instead I'll go for a year to teach because that makes a lot more sense. But in a nutshell, it was just really hard to go. Financially, it wasn't working out. And I tried to go with a few friends and it just wasn't working out. And so because of everything that was going on in my life at the time, I just said, you know what, let's just do it. Let's just apply. So I applied for EPIC and I came here in 2014. And I had all these hopes that I'll be sent to, Seoul or Daejeon or Busan. And they sent me to like this little town in the middle of nowhere. And literally that's how I came. And why I stayed, I don't know.
And whereabouts did you start your teaching career in Korea?
It was a town called Hwacheon, which is really very north, close to the borders, not as close as you can get, but it was pretty near. It's more of a soldier town, so there are more soldiers than there are civilians, and so we had wonderful things such as army festivals where army tanks would come out on the streets and just take over the town, and really small schools. Like in my school, the whole from year one, from nursery until year 6, so that's kindergarten to 6th grade, there was 27 children in total.
Wow.
And most of them were in kindergarten, so you can kind of imagine like it was really like quiet, full of much older people than there were younger families. So it was a big shock to me.
Quite a bit of a culture shock, I suppose, because for me personally, when I first arrived in Korea, this is going back to 2005, although I've been living in and out of Korea. My first time I arrived, it's now quite a big city, but it was a very small village at this time in Ansung, and I felt like I didn't see any other foreigners in this town. Yes. It was really remote, and I would be getting on the bus and going to work and that sort of thing. And it
Yeah.
was a huge culture shock for me when I first arrived. I suppose the same.
Same exact thing. I mean, there were so few of us because we were with Epic. I think that was a nice thing about going with a big company, is that there are other people that are sent to your town or region. So we all lived in the same building. So when you would get into a taxi, you didn't even have to say your address. They would immediately say the school name because they knew where we all lived. And everywhere you walked, you couldn't really do anything dodgy because everyone would know who you are and where you work. And you're that teacher that works at that school, and you're like, yes, I am, you know. So
Best behavior.
it was such a culture shock because I didn't expect it, especially coming from London. And well, I had just come from Bristol because I was there for uni, but I did not expect to go to such a countryside. I mean, in the summer when I first arrived, I arrived in the summer, and my students were catching dragonflies for
yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is like and we're making skipping ropes out of dried grass. And I was just like, have we gone back into time?
It's really nice though to witness this, you know, and the kids playing in nature and getting involved with each other. I don't see it as much nowadays in Korea because it seems very well connected, and you know, with the internet and technologically, and you know, everything's very well. You know, I remember, you know, heading into Seoul, and I think this was before the SRT was created, and so there's like the KTX and the SRT is super rapid train. That's the official name for it.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and I would go into Seoul, and you had all these nice, you know, hanoks, the traditional Korean buildings in the small little rural towns, and you would go in, you would get a nice Korean meal. But now it's all been gentrified and modernized, and it's a shame because a lot of these old buildings have been knocked down and they've been replaced, and very, very much sanitized. The way I like to say it.
I would say not in Hwacheon. You can still go back and still feel like you're really in the countryside. I think they've kept it quite well. Also because it's so near the borders, there's not much that can be done. It's not always, I wouldn't say safe, but I had a lot more experiences of like the whole town has a drill where we need to go, like, you know, practice where we need to go in case there is an attack and things like that. And I haven't had it in the city that I'm in now, but there it was much more real that Korea is still at war. Like you really did sense it from time to time, with just the presence of soldiers and tanks and things like that.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Well, perhaps we could maybe move on to your experiences working at a university, because I suppose you made the transition from EPIC or EPIC, however you
I always
wish to
call it
pronounce
EPIC, but EPIC.
Yes.
Yeah.
From the public school to the university where you're working now. So perhaps you could tell us a bit more about your experiences, how you got into universities.
Yes. So university has always been the holy grail amongst the teachers in Korea. And I was fortunate enough to just know the right person at the right time. And that's always the response I give to everyone. Just be connected. Social, like networking is really at the top of my list, because that's how you get the really good opportunities. Because most people want to hire someone that they know or is connected to someone that they know. So a friend of mine just said, there's an opportunity. Are you interested? So that was for the University of Education. And at the time, I actually really liked working at the primary school that I was at. But when she said you get 4 months off a year, literally light bulb moment, I was like, okay, I'm making the switch, because it was much harder with EPIC you didn't really have any vacation. People would go off on holiday and you'll be stuck desk warming. So it was,
Yes.
yeah, I was just like, I love the kids, but if I'm going to stay in Korea longer, it just made more sense to switch over to university. And I was fortunate enough to teach not only conversation classes, but also teaching methodology. And so they were really interested in how did I teach children English? What kind of methods did I have? And I must say, when I started, it wasn't that great. But over the years, I've just, I continued working alongside with kids. So I didn't stop working with kids. I always took on like a extra curricular class, like an after school class, so that I could always verify the methods that I was teaching. So I continued along that path. And yeah, I've been there for over 11 years now.
Wow.
Teaching future educators, which is, for me, it's really amazing to be in that position, to kind of have some kind of an impact, and to show different methods and styles to teachers. And from time to time, I do get people that come back and they're like, oh, Claudia, you know, that thing you taught, I'm still using it, which is, it's like an honor.
Yes, that's great. That's good, because we're all constantly learning ourselves, aren't we, with as educators? And you know, for me at a university, I've been teaching a variety of different credit courses. More about maybe writing skills, academic writing skills, or presentation skills, maybe culture as well, critical thinking skills. So kind of diverging away from maybe English as a foreign language and more into other aspects. But then for me, as an English teacher at heart, you know, I find myself having to experiment and try different things, because no one's really teaching me or telling me what goes well, what doesn't go well. And you know, for me, that sort of reflection is so important, and for people to come back to you to tell you what worked and what didn't work is invaluable, isn't it?
It's really important. So in addition to working at the education university, I also got another job, because unfortunately with Korea, just jobs change. So I was full-time with the education university, and then a few years ago the law changed. And normally it didn't impact us, and we weren't supposed to be impacted, but for once it did impact my job, and it became part-time, which at first I thought was a negative thing, but then later on I discovered actually it gives you a lot more freedom, and you can just pursue so many other avenues. So I took on another university job, and there I mainly focus on conversation classes. But just like you, I'm also teaching on culture and presentation skills as well. I try to kind of combine everything as a package, rather than just, you know, let's have conversation, but for what purpose, or what can we do with the conversation?
Yes, that's great. That's great. Well, I'm just going to divert into our sponsorship today. So this show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. So level up your professional development today and visit hachetlearning.com to explore more on their full range of titles. Okay, right. Well, what sort of challenges have you encountered? You mentioned a bit more about you know, the opportunities that you've had, and slightly the difficulty or the challenges or the regulations that changed about your employment, working or moving part-time. But what other challenges have you encountered working, living in Korea or university?
Biggest challenge in English teaching is always interest. So my courses, even if they're credit courses, tend to be the classes that everybody just has to take, and they, you know, rarely have any interest in it. And so I have to spend the whole semester trying to make them believe that, yes, you do need this, and yes, it will be helpful. So it's just, yeah, building interest, making English matter beyond grades, and beyond just doing well so that you can go to the next stage. Like currently at one of the universities where I teach, students need to take it in order to graduate. And so, everybody just comes, but then during that time, I found that, sharing my culture, just getting them interested and caring, because sometimes it can be like dragging dead logs. You're just like, come on, if I'm here, let's just be here and be excited. And so it's finding ways to connect with students and of all ages, because, in a year, I could be working with kids in the 6th grade. I could be working with freshmen. I could be working with adults. I've also worked with parents. And so it's finding ways to connect and say, this actually does matter, even in your Korean context. I had a really great comment by one of my younger students. And she said to me, Claudia teacher, why are we studying English? Nobody in my school speaks English outside of this classroom. And she said, my parents don't speak. My teachers barely speak English. So why are we forced to see you? And, I like you, but why do we have to do this for 3 times a week? And I said, well, the generic answer where, when you grow up and you go to university and, but at the time she was just like, but she couldn't really understand, because she's not going to university the next year. She doesn't use English. And so again, I had to find ways to make it matter. And so we just built friendships. We built, we had experiences together. We cooked, we made stories, we danced, and all of those things helped to kind of bridge that gap. But I think by far that's been my biggest challenge. That, and probably my lack of Korean ability. The language barrier, which, I mean, I think I've done okay, because I've been here for as long as I've been with, my level is embarrassing. My mom always tells me, come on, you've been there long enough, it's time. And I'm like, yes, I know, I will. And so again, I do find I've seen the difference between a teacher who does speak Korean fluently, or to some extent, and the way they can connect with the students is amazing. So that I've always envied that, really. So I don't know about you, whether you do you ever instruct in Korean, or are you purely in English?
Well, my context is international business school where I work at, and so for me, the lingua franca is English, but then I do have Koreans that join my classes, and one of the classes that I instruct is maybe business English, where I would say 4/5 are Korean language learners. But I've seen them transition from maybe they've just finished the Sunung and the university entrance exam, and they've come into the business school, but their English isn't of the ability yet where they can communicate effectively. And I've seen them come in at that level, but then they start to make improvements and develop and find their own voice, which is really great to see. And but then when I have challenges with students, Korean students in this regard, where they find they can't really communicate, or they can't really they find a struggle to say anything to an open-ended question which doesn't have any particular answer other than to engage them, or to get them to think critically, then I may use Korean to just say, come on, don't be too quiet, tell us what you think. So just these small times I would use it, but most of the time, 99% of the time, it's English for me.
It's the same situation for me as well. Most of my students are Korean. This year, I think in my first year kind of general English class, I have one or two foreign students, and they're usually great. They're usually much more engaging. It's mostly my Korean students. I usually have a mixed level class and a lot more quieter students, or students that are quite reserved. And I think that's also partly cultural.
Yes.
Which I've had to adapt over the years and just be a bit more patient with, you know, answers. So I always say, guys, I'm not talking to the wall. I'm talking to human beings. I want to know your answer. And so I've had to get creative with getting them to give answers. So things like Padlet really helped. Kind of having everyone just share without, you know, the necessarily, you know, pressure of like saying it out loud and everybody hearing your voice, or using like Nearpod. Sometimes I use it to just get everybody to just comment or answer an open-ended question. That's also helped quite a lot as well.
That's interesting. So Padlet is the application where students can just come in and just post things, or
post things. So you can post a discussion or a question, and then everyone can post. They can either write or share a picture or video, and so and you see it, like you can all see it as they're posting.
That's what I find quite engaging. I've used it previously with universities in Korea and back in the UK when I was working there, particularly for international students where they haven't had that opportunity to, you know, interact maybe remotely through Padlet. But the other application you mentioned was Nearpod. Is that right?
Yeah, Nearpod. Yes.
What is Nearpod?
It's I used it mostly during the pandemic when I couldn't see the students. So it's basically why are the words escaping? It's just a presentation tool. So you can post videos and PowerPoints, like Google Slides and questions. So it works essentially like Padlet, but you can do more of a PowerPoint lesson basically online. So you share the link to your students and they all log in, and then you're working together through the slides. So you can they can either do it by themselves, or you can do a live lesson where they're all seeing the PowerPoint on their phones, and they can then answer and reply to questions or play games as well. So it's really interactive.
That's
really
nice.
Interactive platform. Yeah.
Before we go on into our discussion, I'm just going to sideways into our next ad sponsored here. The BET Show, BETT Show, join BET for the biggest week in education from the 21st to the 23rd of January 2026 in the XL London, with immersive workshops, thought-provoking speakers, hundreds of hours of CPT accredited content, cutting-edge technology, and unrivaled networking. There's no opportunity quite like it for educators. So get your free ticket today by visiting uk.betshow.com. Bet, B-E-T-T, uk.bettshow.com. Okay. Thank you very much for your patience, Claudia.
No problem.
Well, you mentioned about engagement. One of the challenges I've had, particularly for, you know, my courses, which kind of, you know, chimes in, echoes with what you're saying, particularly for students that just have to do my courses where, you know, the majority of the other courses are business related, like marketing and that side of things. How would you go about trying to motivate, engage students who have zero interest in the course that you're trying to deliver?
So I come up with the wackiest ideas. I noticed, and I also, number one, I watch the students, I observe them, I observe what they like and what they're into. And a few years ago, it started off with my primary school, elementary kids, and they liked rap quite a lot. And so I thought, oh, what if instead of singing the generic, you know, EFL songs that are, by the way, I completely just hate. I thought to myself, okay, why don't we do a rap? And so I went on this search for appropriate raps for the classroom, because as we know, especially with younger kids, some of the content is not appropriate. With older kids, you know, it's a bit more flexible. But I found that there was very little available in terms of that particular genre that was safe, and it's not just about finding child-friendly versions, because what happened to me one time, I experimented. I took a nursery rhyme. I think it was not a nursery rhyme, but a well-known song, I Can Sing a Rainbow. I think it's like red and yellow and pink and green. And I had a 5th graders, and I found a beat. It was like a popular song, maybe around 2010. And I realized that you could sing the song to that beat, and it went really well. So when I introduced it, it was a hit. My students loved it so much. And then, unbeknownst to me, they went home and somehow found the original version. And thankfully, it was an appropriate video. It was 2 kids that had done the rap. So, and then it was very PG, so it's okay. So after that, I was like, oh, I need to really be careful as to what instrumentals I'm using and what I'm recommending. And then that's where I stumbled upon other artists or other people that are really interested in kind of using rap within the classroom. So I found that somebody had turned one of Dr. Seuss's songs into a rap. And then that led me into this spiral where there's loads of artists who do kind of children's books or nursery rhymes to rap beats. Sometimes it's original or sometimes it's well known. So I've done that. I've experimented. And then I thought, why don't I try this with my adult students? And I was really apprehensive at first because they are a tough crowd. They do not move for anybody. And so I was watching, I think, the Jimmy Fallon show. And I think there was he was doing a lot of kind of similar things where he would take a popular songs and put it to a nursery rhyme, and I thought it was brilliant. But they also did I think it was the alphabet aerobics by an artist called Black Alicious, and it was Harry Potter. Oh, who plays Harry Potter again? I can't remember his name. Daniel, is it Daniel?
Oh, Daniel Radcliffe.
Yeah, Daniel Radcliffe did it, and he was really good. And so I thought, oh, maybe if I show the video of an adult doing this and someone that they know, because they know loads of people like Harry Potter. So you know this actor, he's done this challenge. How about we attempt this challenge? So I presented it in that way, and they received it quite well. At first, they were like, oh, we can't do it, it's too difficult. But we broke it down and we just did 2 lines every lesson, or no, 4 lines every lesson, because he goes from A to Z. But I just broke it down really slowly, and we did it. And after a few weeks, they could go from, the beginning to the end. And so they were like, oh, we can do this. And I was like, oh, you can do this. Great. And so that started that, journey of introducing more raps and more songs. And so that's now become the way that I start my lessons. I always have a song or a rap at the beginning of class, and it's just a way to motivate them, because once they laugh, they relax, and once they're relaxed, they're a lot more welcoming to the other crazy stuff that I'll ask them to do. So it's quite fun. So in doing that at home, I drive my husband crazy because I'm always remixing nursery rhymes, because I also realize if I do the very popular raps, sometimes they're very difficult, and then that can put off a lot of students, because again, I'm working with mixed levels and not everyone is capable of doing the faster, wordier raps. So I also love using nursery rhymes, but if by changing the beat, it makes them a lot more appropriate to the adults, and they're a lot more welcoming of them. So I'm always at home, remixing stuff and then saying to my husband, listen to this, is it good? Give me your opinion. And then I go and I try it with my students. And most times it works. Other times I've had to, say, okay, this one wasn't great.
But you've got to try these things, I suppose, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's been really, really great. My favorite part of doing raps is always at the end when the students can actually do it themselves. And then it's like, oh, it wasn't as hard as you thought at first, because they always think, oh, it's too difficult. But then, we get over that and they're like, wow, that was actually quite good. And then they sing it back to me every now and then. Yeah.
I do remember I haven't done any forms of singing or performance in the adult classroom, but I do recall a time when I was teaching either young learners, whether it was in the UK or in South Korea at a hagwon, and it was just that rite of passage, wasn't it, that you have to go through and sing songs and let and it does engage the learners, and trying to find songs which were more suited for the topic at hand. So if it was about colors, like the rainbow song you mentioned, or that sort of thing, it was very interesting. And I don't know, I would feel very apprehensive about going in to teach adult learners, or not teach them, but to engage them a song. I would feel so embarrassed myself.
Yeah. See, the thing that I found, because that's the comment that I get the most, because I've talked about this in other settings as well. And what I found is, as a teacher, if you set the classroom environment where you're open to experimenting with different ways of learning English, at first it is really uncomfortable. I won't kid you. It's even for me, who completely loves the genre, and I'm like an ambassador for rap in the classroom. I've also found it very difficult at times when you have an extremely quiet class, mostly males, and they're like, please do not make me do this. But I always explain to them, okay, look at the benefits of being able to sing. One, we're working with our diaphragm, where that's the power of our voice, which will help us when we present. We know where the power is coming from. Two, we're warming up, because the mouth it's a muscle. The tongue is a muscle that we have to stretch and work before we can actually engage. And I talk about my own personal experiences with learning Korean, how I just get, I don't know if you can call it speaker's fatigue, just a short conversation in Korean. Afterwards, I'm exhausted. I need, half an hour of silence or not doing anything just to recover. So kind of doing something to warm you up and to kind of remind your brain or wake your brain up to say, I'm going from this language to another language. And I explain it to them like that, and they are receptive. But then I say, I'm the teacher, we're going to do this, whether or not you like it.
You've got to enjoy it whilst we're here.
Yeah. So it is. Yes.
Yes. Sorry. Carry on.
No. I was going to say it's really trial and error. But as I've done it over the years, I've realized that actually they do enjoy it, because it's also different. They don't expect it. They expect certain things, but it's so fresh that sometimes the curiosity kind of gets the better of them, and they're like, oh okay, then let's see this. Let's go on with it.
I suppose we have to try wacky things, different things, because if we have students who have, like adult learners, they've come into multiple classes in the past, haven't they? Or I would assume to learn English, whether it was in public school or a hagwon in Korea, or, that side of things. And they're going into yet another classroom, and it's like, do we have to speak English again? Do we have to try and learn? Is it the present perfect that we're learning today? And we have to try and do different things, experiment, because it just makes things unexpected, unpredictable, and that in itself can be quite engaging.
The other things that I've tried to do, which is storytelling. And so
Mhm.
I first of all start with role playing, because again, I see the benefits of even the techniques that are used within storytelling can cross over into just a regular presentation. Because I don't know about you, but for one thing that I really despise is when a student is given a presentation and they just stand and they either read a script that nowadays they've generated with ChatGPT,
Yeah.
or they just read the PowerPoint. And I'm like, no, you're communicating. So I realized also perhaps in their education they might not have had as many experiences of actually engaging with the audience and knowing what that looks like or what techniques you need to use for that. So I find that, you know, storytelling, role playing can be that kind of bridge.
Yes.
That helps you learn those techniques with eye contact and delivering a message and working a lot with emotions as well. Because again, most of my, I can only speak from, you know, with the experience of working with South Korean students, but a lot of them can be a bit monotonous. And so even if they're telling you something really dramatic, the delivery is so flat that it's just like, oh my goodness, the story, the content is good, but your delivery just fell so short and we didn't connect. So again, I found that using those types of techniques can help to at least make them aware. Because I also do, so I do kind of low stake role playing where I give you a script that is it's only 30 seconds worth of dialogue, but you've got to try and bring it to life. So it could be in a restaurant and you practice it once and then I give you another challenge. Well, who are you? Who are the characters in the role play? Are you friends? Are you enemies, co-workers? So we build up this backstory so that they can kind of involve more of the body language and more of the kind of the non-verbal parts of communication. And then I say, now you have to go to the front and show it to us, which they're usually mortified at that point. They're like, no, you didn't tell us this at the beginning. But what you do see is that amongst the many mediocre performances, you see the really good examples, and they love to learn from each other. And we don't necessarily need to say, oh, that was really good, but they can see, oh, that's how you delivered that, or that's how that line is supposed to be said. And so they learn from each other, and by doing this regularly, they get more comfortable with the front of the classroom, and they kind of get a little bit better. I'm not going to say 100%, but even I'm happy even with 10% improvement. I'm like, if it's better than what you started with, I'm super happy. So little by little, they grow in that skill, and they start to be more conscious of people's eyes. Am I looking at the people when I'm saying the line? Am I looking at my partner? Because sometimes even team presentations, it can feel like it's all very individual, and it's all about, let me do what I need to do and get off. And it's not about the message and the delivery and the engagement. It's just like, oh, she said I've got to do this, so I'm going to do it. But then when I see a student who's really thinking about the audience and they're thinking about giving us an experience, I'm always like, brilliant. I get so excited about that.
That's really, really interesting. I teach a presentation class, and one of the difficulties I had right at the beginning, like you mentioned, was that, you know, and it's nice to be able to have a variety of different students from different you know, countries, maybe the Western European countries or South American countries, they would be quite comfortable at delivering a presentation on whatever the topic I recommended. And then you had the Korean students who would rehearse and you know, by heart this line, this you know, the script, and then deliver it without any eye contact, or they may be reading their script on their phone. And I discovered quite early on, oh my gosh, this is just so, you know, there's no communication, there's a lack of connection with the audience. And what can I do to try and improve that? Well, I thought, well, the first thing is I'm going to ban all scripts and all phones from
Yes,
the presentation.
Thank you. There should be a public announcement.
Yeah.
Everybody ban those things.
The next thing was, okay, how can I personalize it? Because you can go on to a variety of different websites, Canva, for example, and create a presentation about Starbucks. And it's like, well, and it creates the whole backstory about Starbucks and everything else like that. And I'm thinking, what's the point? There's no personalization there. And I decided I'm going to choose personalized topics that students can share, like maybe their favorite cafe or their favorite coffee shop, or and then build up that brainstorming, build up that planning, and then they give a very short presentation, and then I lead up to what we call like a Pecha Kucha presentation. I'm not sure if you're so
I've heard of it before.
So 20 slides with just images only, and they transition every 20 seconds, and then the students have to tell a story, and that's what they're working towards. So just over 6, nearly 7 minutes in length. So they start at like 2 minutes, going up gradually, incrementally to like 4 minutes, then 5, 6 minutes, and then up towards 7. And I found that a lot more engaging, first of all. But then I found like the weaker students who come to me and say, I've never presented. I find it so challenging. I don't know what to do to try and improve my presentation. And it's like, well, like anything, you got to practice. You just got to dive in and try, and you're going to fail, as everyone does. But you got to try and then find your voice and find your how comfortable you're at. And then I've seen such major improvement over the past few semesters with these weaker students, Korean or other international students, who are uncomfortable, but then they find it, actually I can do it, and then these skills can then transfer into other courses. And I always try and tell my students, like what you mentioned, they come to me and say, well, why are we doing this? Why do I have to do presentations? Why do I have to learn about writing? But then they come to me afterwards and say, thanks, I've tried out that your writing course helped me with this essay, or I feel more comfortable with presentations. So, and that sort of feedback is great.
Yeah, it's really brilliant, because it has to be transferable for it to matter. They have to see that it's useful, not just within this class, but I can use these techniques in the future. So with my education teachers, I always talk about, you are a teacher already. This is what you could do with your class, and this is the impact that it would have on your students. And with the general English students, or even with my professional student, we talk a lot, just like you said, about real life situation. How is work going? How can you make a difference in your conversations that you're having with your colleagues? But similarly to you as well, I kind of changed the style of presentations that I did, because I did start out with kind of generic topics and I was very bored very quickly. And then I remembered I really enjoy watching Dragon's Den, which is I can't remember what's the American version of it. It's got 2 names, right? It's but it's just a pitching
pitch. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. It's like a pitching a product. So it's 3 to 4 minutes long, and they've got to pitch, and I chose noodles. So kind of instant noodles. You've got to pitch an original instant noodle flavor. And they've got to go a step further and actually make it so that we can taste it in class. And so I've got like elements of like, it's got to be unique. So I can't see it in GS, because I want it to be real. I want it to impact real life. So I think we talk a lot about hypotheticals, but when it's actually real life issues or real life situations, it changes everything. And it really does encourage everyone of every level to give it a try. So they've got to create a wonderful new product and pitch it to us. So using all of those things like storytelling and engaging with us emotionally, and building up a story, not just reading to us, but selling us that product, making us believe in their vision. And I've had some crazy combinations, and some crazy names. So they've got to come up with a company name as well as a product name. And last year, I didn't do it this year, but last year I had one of the best flavors I've ever had. And I questioned whether they actually made it up, or whether this was something they stole from somewhere. Because it was, they kind of used crispy, like the snack, dried noodles, which are crispy, covered in chocolate with little bits of like orange zest. It was just the wackiest combination, but it was so tasty, and they delivered it brilliantly. And so even in that, they sometimes find out that they have other skills that they can also explore outside of our classroom. Like those particular students, they had a really great marketing strategy. They were hilarious, and the product was good, and the whole class responded really positively. And so doing some of these wackier presentation styles, I always have a student who comes back and says, when you first gave it to us, I really hated the idea, but after doing it, I'm really glad and I'm really happy, and I've had so much fun. And so for me, that's the rewarding part, is just like you said, students coming back and realizing something in them without you necessarily saying it, but they go through this process, and they grow essentially without so it's really nice. But it's very
really
wacky.
rewarding.
If you want to try it, go on an empty stomach. You will have so much fun.
I'll have to try it.
You'll have to try it. I once got blueberry cream cheese noodles, which was not the best. It was not the best. It was cold and lumpy and just yeah.
Wow. Right. Well, I'm just going to segue into our next sponsorship for today's show. And this is Teachers Talk Connect 2026. So, teachers, Teacher Talk Connect is back, our annual CPD and networking extravaganza. Join the TTR, Teacher Talk Radio team, on Saturday, the 14th of March in Manchester. Tickets are free. So what are you waiting for? Head over to ttrradio.org/connect 2026. Okay, right. Well, let's move on to maybe, you mentioned about how we're constantly evolving or trying or experimenting different things to engage our students. But then that naturally leads into, the development of materials and what, or trying your own materials out with the students. And what has your experience been with materials development?
So back just before the pandemic hit, one of the professors from my education university wanted to make a book for our course. And so she pitched the idea to me. She would do the theory stuff, and I would focus on the kind of practical activities that students can do. And I was petrified. I'd never written a book. I mean, I'm known for kind of coming up with these weird ideas, which I guess she had, seen over the years. And so she was interested in what I did. But it was such a huge project, and we had such a tight deadline, and then the pandemic hit, and that was crazy in itself. But that gave me a taste of really creating materials specific to the types of students that I work with. So I found that there are a lot of materials out there, but sometimes they're not really focusing on, non-native speakers, or in my situation at the education universities, non-native teachers. So they themselves are struggling with English. And so some of the textbooks, even just the sentences that are used are really difficult to understand. They've got to first translate the sentence, understand what the sentence is before they can even kind of get to grips with the techniques or the advices. So I started to work on a book project for that. But whilst simultaneously I was working with kids, and again I realized the same thing, this idea of there's not I didn't find books that really cater to Korean learners of English. So English books that are focused on Korean kids who are learning them. So that made me curious as to, well, could we create something? And I was teaching phonics at the time, and a lot of my students had struggles with just remembering words. And so I kind of, with their help, I kind of came up with this idea to create a bilingual ABC book where each letter will be represented by a Korean dish. So it was, I was trying to kind of address kind of the mental overload. I didn't want them to look at a book and they have to first of all learn the food word and the letter word and the pronunciation. So it's just like there's a lot that goes on in their little heads. So I was like, okay, if we have something that's familiar, that might be able to help them to see the sound. But it's so difficult to do an ABC book on Korean food, as I found out, because a lot of the foods, number one, some of the letters didn't exist. So we kind of cut corners. So with X, we had to use xylitol, which is a flavor enhancer. So it's like, it's not a dish, but at the same time, my students know xylitol because it's a gum that's very popular. So
yes, I know the gum. Yeah.
And then Z, there's no dish that starts with Z. In fact, there's no sound in Korean that starts with Z.
Yes.
So I initially was going to go with zucchini, but that's what I also, I shared the ideas with other teachers and professors, and they were so strong on the fact that ahobak is not the same. It's not the zucchini that I know. And so they were like, no, you cannot represent that. And I also wanted to use jjajangmyeon for the letter J, and everybody was like, that's not a Korean dish. So I had to battle the purist. I had, other people that were like, So in the end, through a lot of research discussions, I just did the best that I could. But the whole point was just to make the load of learning English a little bit easier on students and parents as well. Because that's the other problem that I found, is that, like my students said, nobody speaks English, so why should I, And so whenever I'm pitching this book, I always tell to the parents, you've got to join in on the fun. You've got to be a part of the learning. It shouldn't just be that, go and learn and I'm going to be here, not involved, but like learn together, cook a meal and learn what that, sound is in English and how it begins, and look at words that are similar, or maybe find out what that food is in England, what foods in England start with a K, or just kind of explore and play and have fun together. And so it's been really a journey, but I'm so grateful to those elementary students who helped to coach me to this point, really.
It's very interesting. I suppose for educators, we should all try and develop materials which are connect with the students that we're teaching, because like you mentioned, a lot of materials that are published globally don't cater for specific audiences unless there's a specific request for the big publisher to publish a book for maybe the Middle Eastern market or something like that. But then when you've got Korean learners who have difficulties with, like you mentioned, pronunciation, the vocabulary, and and you mentioned the process, and there's so much that's going on in their mind at the time, and it's a fascinating experiment to try to connect what they already know, their knowledge now, to what you're trying to teach them, and whatever you can do to connect whether it's through materials development or engaging activities, as we mentioned, is always a bonus, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a big believer in activating prior knowledge because, especially in the context of Korea, students spend so much time in hagwons learning endless lists of vocabulary. But it's
Yes.
like, when will I use them? So
Yes.
I'm really big into activating that knowledge in something useful.
Yeah.
So whether that's, doing an activity or presenting something, kind of, what do you already know? Let's pull it out of you, and then let's work with what you already know, because they have so much information given to them. I remember a funny story. I was teaching elementary students, and the principal came in halfway through our lesson and said, I want the kids to learn these 20 words by next week. And I took a look at the list, and I was like, when are these like year fours ever going to use these words? Like, these are for adults. And I think he was just reading maybe a book. He saw a list of words, and he was just like, right, that's it. They've got to know these words. And it was just the disconnect between what we were actually learning, their age and their interest wasn't there. And I found that to be really disheartening. And so I've through experiences like that, it's made me really, really passionate about making English enjoyable and fun and relevant to the people that I'm teaching. And so that's the reason why I really try my best to introduce new ways.
It kind of reminds me of an advert that I saw on TV in Korea once about English language teaching, or getting children into hagwons, and the advert was about a particular hagwon. For those people watching, a hagwon is a private language institute. But anyway, it was an advertisement for a particular language institute. I can't remember which one it was, but then the backdrop was the child learning, or not knowing any English, and then 4 weeks later they're able to give a presentation to their parents, and the parents are there clapping away and going, my child's brilliant in English now, almost bilingual. And these sort of promises. And the hagwon that I worked at was like, in 12 months time your child would be able to speak English with an American accent, and I was the only Brit in the hagwon. I was like, where do these promises come up? And the culture of learning is so far removed from what's actually happening in the language in the language classroom. Plus the added component of power distance, where it's very much top down. This is what you need to do, and this is what we're doing. And it's like, okay, well, I give the example of saying these students need to learn grammar. You're playing too many games, and the director's told me if I had one. And it's like, okay. And then after a week, the directors came back to me and said, the students are sick and tired of grammar. You have to play more games. And I'm like, make up your mind.
It can just be so frustrating. And I think I guess we didn't talk about this yet, but that's the other reason why I also introduce a lot of cultures. So I was born in Congo, raised in England, and now I live in Korea, and I've had a baby in Korea. So that now my baby is, partly Congolese, Nigerian, English, Korean. And so the other thing that I found to help my students engage in English has been to share culture, to share culture shocks, norms and differences. And I always say, you're my partner. You'll teach me about your culture. And mostly I deal with mostly Korean students. So you'll teach me about Korea, and I'll teach you about, England and the places that I've been to as well. And that's been really, really fun. And that also makes it really exciting, and has led me down, kind of into another project that I'm really passionate about, which is a culture exchange. So I've been doing this for like over 5 years. Every semester I kind of pair up my students with someone from a different country, and I've purposely chosen countries that are really unfamiliar to Koreans, or they're people groups that are in Korea, but they're not very well known. So, for example, Vietnamese people or Filipino people, their cultures aren't known that well. We know the stereotypes, but beyond that, I always want to work on what's beyond the stereotype of this country. Like, let's meet the real person and talk to them and know about them, and then celebrate that culture. And that's been really rewarding. That's also been another favorite style of presentations I've been able to do with my older students, especially. And one really interesting story was I paired these girls. They didn't know, so they don't know who they're going to be paired with. They only know the country, and they don't know whether it's male or female. And so they get very little information, and then they have to try and imagine what would this person be like, what are their likes and dislikes, kind of build your picture. And then when you meet them, was it right, was it wrong? It's just a little bit of fun. But initially I said, all right, you're going to meet this person, he's from Congo. And when they met him, after they met him, they said, we thought he was going to be a girl, and we were really scared because he's different from us, and we've never been around somebody from Congo before, and we felt really uncomfortable. But they said after they had spoken to him, it completely changed their mind. And they were like, wow, we have so many similarities. And we felt more comfortable, because initially they were, even the fact that he was male and they were female made them feel uncomfortable because of all the stereotypes that they've seen and heard and stuff like that. So even that was really nice, to kind of give them an opportunity to speak to somebody they would have never, had the courage to, or even the desire to, and to see that there were similarities there.
That's great. Well, I'm gonna just sideways into our final sponsorship for today, and that's Hachette Learning. So this show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, the publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. So level up your professional development today and visit their website, www.hachetlearning.com, to explore their full range of titles. Okay, well, I think leading on for the next few moments is what you mentioned about culture for me was I always try and bridge the gap between culture because of the international students that I have. I try and pair students up, whether it's Koreans or other international students, with another international student, so that they can, otherwise they get into bubbles in the classroom with just Koreans in one side of the room and non-Koreans the other side of the room. And it's like, no. I want you to sit next to someone who is not the same nationality. Mix yourself up, or I do a random, pairing up with the students, or height at the front of the classroom from shortest to tallest, and it's like, okay, you three, you join, and that sort of thing. And I think otherwise it's that sort of initial us and them sort of mindset that. I don't want to stereotype Koreans, but they have a greater habit of just pairing up with their own sort of nationality, rather than, going, right, I'm going to try and chat to someone that I don't know, or who appears non-Korean to me. And I think that's important to try and develop that confidence. And again, we've mentioned about confidence in the classroom, or student confidence. And by the end of the semester, once students feel comfortable, it's in my setting, then they feel they have a chance to develop their voice. And I recall 2 Chinese students that came to see me, and they said they want to improve their speaking skills. They can't communicate, or they feel very reticent. They don't say much. And I said, okay, well, come with me. And I just took them into the office next door, and there were all these international students there. And I said, right, one of you just join them and just have a chat to them. Is that all right, everybody? And they said, yeah, all right, sit down. And then they were just chatting to her. And it's like, that mental fatigue was like starting to come out. And it's like, oh my God, this is English. And I said, the other student, come with me. Let's have a quick chat. And then I just swapped them around. And I think it's so important for students to discover that they have a chance to share what's unique about them, because that's important. That's the first thing that we share. Like, you know, who are you? What's your name? Where are you from? Etc. Etc. Out of that natural curiosity, and it's great to see that sort of confidence build up.
It's just really nice. I think also the other thing that they learn, a lot of my students, because mostly Korean, always feel like their English is not good enough because they don't have perfect grammatical sentences. And it's experiences like this of talking to international people that make them realize, actually, I just strung a couple of words and the other person actually understood me. I said, you know, hi, I'm blah, blah. Do you live in Korea? Do you like kimchi? And they were like, yes, I love it. And it's just like a very basic conversation, but they shared something and the other person understood them. I think it's really important that our students experience being understood by someone else, or not being understood and overcoming that challenge. Because when somebody says, what did you say? Or sorry, that can break you apart. I know it all too well. In Korea, when somebody's like "Monago," and I'm like, mayday, mayday, you know, what do I do now? And they need to go through that experience of, you know, what do I do when someone doesn't understand me? Do I stop talking, or do I say it again, or do I use my phone? And so I love putting them in situations where they've got to survive and they've got to experience the mental fatigue so that they know what to do next, or, you know, they've got to learn phrases that, you know, help them kind of buy some time. So we always learn, oh, I'm really sorry, could you say that one more time? Or I'm really sorry, could you just give me a minute? Because that's real life, and that's
real life.
You know, that's what happens in a real conversation.
So
you need time sometimes.
You do, and you learn a lot more from that, don't you? From those situations where, you know, like you said, those little interactions that I have with the Koreans, or the Korean, with Korean, the Korean people,
students,
Korean students, or just the general public outside. And I'm like, wow, what was that word? Okay, just recall that. And I'm like saying it to myself. And then I go to my wife and I say, this person said this, what does it mean? And she said, like, oh, it means that. And I was like, all right, okay, that makes sense. So, and then you start to process and understand more. And for our students, they have to go through this process of like, what did they say? How did they say that? And the culture, the language is so different, so far removed. You know, even English and Korean, it's such a different culture, such a different language.
It can be really difficult. So I worked with a bunch of soldiers before, where I did this activity where you listen to each other's stories and then you've got to repeat back what the other person has said. And so sometimes when there are mistakes, you know, I always have someone who is more capable in English. Once they want to jump in and explain everything in Korean, and I'm like, no. Let the person who is struggling to explain their story say it again. So we're like, okay, maybe the words you said were not clear. What else can you say? Or look at the person, maybe use your body language a little bit more. So without using a translator or having someone else speaking Korean for you, tell the person your message. Try and use whatever you have to get your message across. And I do this as well when students come to me to ask me a question. Sometimes they come with their phone, or they come with another partner who is a bit better in English, and then they're like, oh, tell the teacher. And I'm like, no, you try first. Let's try and see if we can understand each other. And I feel like that process, it does build their confidence, because they realize, oh, I can actually say it. I've got some words, and I always tell them, you wouldn't reach this stage, especially at university, if you didn't have anything in English.
True.
You must
That's
have
true.
something inside of you in order to reach this. It might not be as high as other people, but you've got enough. And so I think it is about creating situations where they can experience authentic conversation issues, and they can be given techniques to overcome them. So unfortunately for me, I don't always have access to a lot of foreign students. So what I've done instead is kind of do a speed dating style of talking in my class. So you do talk to many people, and it's not always going to be your friends or people that you're familiar with. So it gives them a chance of having conversations with people who they don't know, and they've got to kind of struggle, and kind of sometimes they get a partner who doesn't say a word, so kind of like dealing with that awkwardness of silence and all of that. Or sometimes they have a partner who's far more advanced than them, and it's how do I then keep up with what they're saying? What are the listening techniques I can use? And can I interrupt them and say, oh, I'm so sorry, but could you slow down a little bit? So I found that way they still practice conversation techniques, even though they're not speaking to native speakers or to people from other cultures.
Yes.
So that's also been helpful for my students.
Yes. Yeah. Likewise.
Yeah.
Well, even getting the students, the less confident students, to share an answer to the class. I remember Korean students would then refer their, like, what did he say? Sort of look like, what did he say? And it's like, and they want to interrupt, and they want to say, you got to say this. And it's like, no, don't give them the answer.
Look at me. I always say, stop, look at me.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, I slow down. I say, I ask the question again, and it's like, keep going. And after a while, they start to find that confidence that they don't have, they miss. And it's really nice to see that development, as well as as students, they and I always make it as light or as jovial as possible, rather than, can't you speak now? You've been studying English for however long, and you've been I go, come on, what do you think? Or I try and say, okay, well, this this student has I ask another student a question, the same question, they give an answer, so hopefully the weaker student realizes the context of the question. And then they maybe have that sort of, it activates them to answer as well.
I was also given the idea of kind of giving the students a minute to think about their answers before then calling on someone, or the think, pair, share, doing that before calling on someone to speak, just to give the shyer students a little bit of time to kind of build up courage, or the weaker students to kind of put pieces together so that they can share. And I always tell everyone in the classroom, everyone is valuable, like all answers are valuable. And so I had a situation recently where a student stood up to speak, and he visibly he has a very strong Korean accent, and so I had lots of giggles around. And for me, I really despise that, because for me, I said, look, it takes so much courage to stand up and share anything in any language, in any context. Standing up in front of your peers and speaking is already hard enough as it is. And for me, I love it, because I'm not looking at the accent. I'm looking at what he's saying, the context, and what he's sharing that is valuable to me. So I've also learned that you do have to teach respect and encourage respect,
Yes.
especially because just this idea of this perfect accent or perfect grammar is such a strong idea.
Yes, that's true. That's
Yeah,
true. And
amongst the students.
and like you mentioned, the culture, there is that, sore culture of competitiveness, of like right
Yes.
and wrong, regardless. And I feel, do we really have to do that? And what makes your comparison valuable? Because, for students, they're not in the position to compare themselves with other students because they're not really running the class, if that kind of makes sense. It doesn't make sense. And I do maybe take the students aside and say, look, don't do that sort of thing. But I won't embarrass them in front of the whole class, of course. So I think that, again, teaching them within this classroom, this culture, everybody's valuable. Everyone has a voice, like you mentioned. Anyway. Right. Well, we've kind of gone over time. We've ended up chatting for quite a while.
I know, it's so fun.
My apologies.
No.
But it was lovely to have you here, Claudia, and thank you ever so much for joining this week's show.
It's my pleasure.
It's really interesting to learn a bit more about your context of teaching, particularly at a university here in South Korea, and for me, and to share our ideas together. So thank you.
Thank you as well. Thank you so much for having me today.
That's great. Well, there were quite a few people that joined in. Thank you ever so much. There was Mr. Franco here. He said, good morning, watching from... now, my pronunciation might be wrong, so my apologies. Watching this from Punta del Este, Uruguay. So thank you, Claudia and Martin, for such an interesting topic. Greetings. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Franco. And Roger as well. Nice to see you back on air, Martin. Thank you ever so much, Roger. And nice to be back. I was on a bit of a vacation or a bit of a sabbatical live streaming because it can get fatigue. Yeah, you can get live stream fatigue, I suppose, or YouTube fatigue. But thank you ever so much again, Claudia, and hopefully we can do another live stream in the future. It was great to have you here.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, everyone. I really enjoyed it.
All right. Well, thank you ever so much, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful week wherever you are, week ahead, and join us in a fortnight's time with the next Sunday Social. So take care, everybody. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.